Hello, and welcome to the News in 5 for June 2022. Hard to believe. I am your host, Peter Martin, president of Gosselin Martin Associates. The News in 5 is a quick look back at the news of healthcare facilities management in June 2022. As always, we look at three stories in a no-frills way. We look at the market, we look at the organization, and then we give you a career best practice. I want to start this News in 5, as always, with the market, story number one. And I want to talk about resumes. And I want to talk about past careers. This sounds pretty basic, but resumes aren't people. And the people behind the resume have a story. Increasingly, I'm hearing that folks will reach out to us, and these aren't for jobs that we're recruiting for, because I think when we're recruiting, it's a little bit different of a relationship where they either can't get a call back or people just aren't connecting with them and they're somewhat frustrated. And it got me thinking, and I hear this with people being so busy from HR to hiring directors to candidates. I think that we need to, or organizations need to talk to more people in the realm of healthcare facilities management and just stop looking at the resume and saying no. Now, of course, there are some people you're never going to speak with, right? You're not, because their resume, based on their career experience, they don't have what you're looking for. But there are people who are qualified, yet they never get in front of people. So whose fault is it? Is the person who creates the resume, or is it the person who's looking at the resume, or can the fault be somewhere in the middle? I guess this is just a cautionary point to say that people can talk better than their resumes. And if you think they may be a fit, don't use that resume necessarily to disqualify them. Now, if they got misspellings and they just don't present well, that's a different scenario. That's a different scenario. But if they've got healthcare experience and you think they may be a fit, and I know you're busy, maybe it's worth a call. You know, I was thinking about this last night as I was folding my laundry, interestingly enough. If you have a 10 to 40 year career, whatever it is, none of us are perfect. We all have things in our employment past that were probably, oh, shoot, man, that really wasn't me. That wasn't representative. Yet we're judging people on their resume, kind of maybe they've gone to a number of jobs, they job hop a lot, whatever it happens to be. This is just an encouraging word, and I'm hearing it more and more. Talk to people. If you think there's a fit there, they've got healthcare experience, they've been in a hospital, you may just want to talk to them. We are all making mistakes in our careers. We can't be judged on maybe one misstep. There's more to people. So I know that this maybe isn't particularly good advice, but I would encourage folks just to talk. And that resume, increasingly, the resume is being used to just cast people aside. And that may still be the case of it. I mean, that's what a resume is for, right? I'm not being naive here, yet there's a story behind every resume. And so if you think there might be a fit, talk to them, talk to them. The only other thing I would say, and the two, is length of stay. Length of stays, and we've talked about this before, people are leaving after 2, 3, 4 years. I don't like it. Nobody likes it, right? But that's the reality of the market. I was talking to a VP of HR at a system hospital. And she said to me, Pete, I tell my hiring managers, if you think you can get 3, 4 good years out of somebody, you got to hire them. So that paradigm has changed, right? When my dad was working, you stayed 20, 25, 30 years, the length of stay. I've said this before. He told me, Pete, you got to stay at least 10 years every job. That's not the reality anymore. So if you're looking at somebody who's been, had a long run at an organization, that's great. And if you find them, that's great. But not everybody has that. And it doesn't mean they're a job hopper. Just means that's the reality of where we live. We have to adapt to the times we live in. And as I've said this before, if employees perceive that organizations are not loyal to them, they're not going to be loyal to the organization. Now, that's a tough spot to be in, right? But that's the reality. And so those length of stays, they have really come down significantly. You know it, I know it, we all know it. You can go to our webpage, gosselin-associates.com/jobs, and you can see the jobs we're recruiting for. Let's go to story 2, the organization. And it's kind of along the lines of the resume. As you may know, for the month of June, we did the Lincoln series. We have podcast out there about employment. We did a dissecting Lincoln's resume. It was very fun. It was a fun series to do. You can find them on our website, on our podcast page. One of the people who reached out to me relative to the education podcast that I did with Jim Smith, and that's up on our high reliability webpage, was Mike Canales. Mike is the director of the healthcare facility management program at Owensboro Community College. I had Mike on the podcast 2 years ago. I'm going to have him on again this fall, excuse me. We're through spring, right? But, Mike said, Pete, at times I thought, and it was a fair criticism and comment. It wasn't really a criticism because I enjoyed talking to him, but he said, sometimes if I didn't know you, I would have thought you were anti-education. And so I do want to say that, though I say, you don't need a degree to succeed in the director role, I'm not anti-education at all. But what I was trying to do was just simply express the viewpoint that the degree isn't needed. Mike actually brought up the Tyranny of Or. Jim Collins wrote a book, Built to Last, and then there was the Tyranny of Or. And Collins calls the Tyranny of Or a common decision process is merely choosing between two or more choices. It is an either or process. And it's an approach that pushes people to believe things must be either A or B, but not both. And through that, you limit yourself. We see this politically today, right? It has to be A or B. You can't be both. You're either this side or that side. You can't have anything in the middle. So Mike and I were talking about the Tyranny of Or as it relates to the degree. And it really, rather than a college degree or nothing, it should be an and. College degrees and experience. Don't limit yourself. Collins in his book says that groundbreaking organizations and functional organizations, they don't go by the Tyranny of Or. It's not you have this or else. They go by an and. And again, I think that's great. That's great advice for our healthcare organizations. Just this week, I heard of a major healthcare organization that is requiring degrees for all of their directors. You would know the organization if I told you who it was. And again, I think, that's just the wrong direction. One other thing on the podcast that I did with Jim Smith, it's up there. It's talking about is a degree required. Jim came out of so he didn't get his degree till later in his life. If you didn't listen to the podcast, I would encourage you to. But he went through the Navy Nuclear Power Propulsion School. This is where to tie back into my point about people looking at the resume, but not talking to the people. If you have a candidate who's gone through that Navy nuclear propulsion, we have a couple in our network and I know these guys and I talk to them often. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Jim. If you have a candidate for a healthcare facilities management job who's gone through that Navy program, and you just look at that resume and say, no, you're doing yourself a disservice. That is why you need to talk to people. Listen to what Jim says about that program and the people who make it through there. Now, does that mean they're going to be A+ healthcare facility manager? Of course it doesn't, but it means talk to people. Only through talking can we discover and can we understand. So I wanted to make it a point to bring out that Navy program because you are cramming college into a 6-month program with the leadership and with everything else. So I think that's worth a good listen, but I just did want to wrap up the Lincoln series. I think we're going to do dissecting Lincoln's resume later this summer. We'll do another lunch and learn for that because that was very enjoyable. But I want to thank Mike and any others who reached out, the others who reached out. I always enjoy talking to Mike. He's very passionate about the Owensboro program. I would encourage you to look into it if you're thinking, you want your degree and you want it focused on healthcare facilities management. Mike's a great guy to talk to. Last story, News in 5, career best practice. I'm going to go back to our high reliability podcast. I'm going to promote it here. We just released one 2 days ago. It depends on obviously when you're hearing this. But this podcast that we released is called From the Hospital to the Farm, a career journey or a career transition. I talked to Dennis Morelli. Dennis is an architect by degree. He's had a number of jobs in healthcare. Most recently, he was the director of planning, design, construction for Maine Health in Portland, Maine. Dennis transitioned from healthcare to working for a sanctuary for animals. He's working on a farm now. It's a great story. It's a great career story. I'd encourage you to listen to it. But in it, and this is where the career best practice comes to, and we talk about this a lot when we're counseling people about their careers. Dennis came to a point where he had some personal trauma that he was dealing with, and he started to question what he was doing, and he asked himself a basic question: what do I want to do? And from what do I want to do, he left healthcare, went to design, construction, facilities management. He's a jack of all trades. He's wearing every hat for Peace Farm Sanctuary in Maine. And that's the transition. But it all came from a question: what do I want to do? And I say to people all the time, that's fundamental. What you really need to do is you're thinking about your career. What do you want to do? Where do you want to be? And it might not mean, that you continue to do what you're doing. So that's a great career practice. Dennis, thanks for the discussion. Listen to that podcast. That's the news in 5 for June 2022. 2 other things. We have a booth at the ASHI Annual in Boston, July 17th to the 20th. We will be in booth 1423. I would encourage you to please stop by, say hello. And of course, we are heading into the July 4th holiday. I want to wish you all a happy 4th of July and happy birthday to America. Thank you for listening to the News in 5. I'm Peter Martin from Gosselin Martin Associates. We will see you next month. As always, thank you for watching.